Welcome. My name is Grandma Storm. I write stories for young adults. Today I'm reading chapters 26 through 30 in my book, The Book of Faith. Theophilus listened for enemy scouts, but heard nothing. There was no sign of smoke in the sky from battle or camps. He must either be at a forward post or else far behind the lines. From his injuries, he decided his attacker must have been a bear or maybe a dog. Assembling all the facts evident to him, he could conclude nothing. He wasn't in uniform. The contents of the pack were not military issue. Was he on a mission requiring dress as a civilian? He thought himself fortunate there was no infection. Blood cleansed the wounds. And the pain in his head? Maybe he was hit with a rock. It did not matter. The important thing was to get well, rejoin his unit, and report to his commanding officer, if he could find him. He knew from the time of year, from the sky, the stars, and the trees. He knew from the mountains and the sun that he was east of the range of the Nephilim. But why? Thinking made his head hurt more, so he concentrated on getting better. It was a struggle, but he erected an open-faced camp near the stream. He made sure it was hidden from trail and sky. His fires were warming with little smoke. The provisions in the pack were generous. He recognized with some surprise supplies from the fortress of the giants. Very interesting. If there was no other answer to all the puzzles when he was better, he would climb the mountain and inquire. Among the mysteries troubling his aching head were the clothes for a little girl. Children were so rare. Why would he be carrying such things? The donkey's injuries were healing as well. She was a sweet creature. The turtle dove remained close by. Curious. Since provisions were adequate, he decided not to eat the bird. All would be understood in time, or never at all. As his vision cleared, he spent hours in the book. The words were a comfort to him. He was engaged in a mighty war. No matter the outcome of an individual battle, he was assured he was on the side of victory. His mercy extends to heaven, his faithfulness the sky. His justice is like mountains, his judgments depths defy. He preserves man and beast. How precious his grace! Beneath the shadow of his wings, my trust in the King I place. One morning he decided to stretch his legs with a walk to the spot where he first awakened after the attack. It had been some time. Perhaps he should have gone there sooner. 27. Faith rolled out of the blanket and climbed the stairs out of the cave. After the violent storm, the sun rose bright with a promise of warmth to follow. There was no sign of the horrible Skiva or their tormented old Scratch. Listening, she heard only wind. She didn't know it, but the gold ribbon was still tied in her hair. It caught the sunlight and flashed like fire in the rain-washed air. She looked up the mountain. She could not see the fortress, but she knew it was there. She would gather supplies and leave. A pack, abandoned by Old Scratch, had half a loaf of Nicander's bread. She tore off a piece and stuffed it into her mouth. Chewing was delightful. She found a bit of rope. She often watched Pa bundle gear. She could do that. In short order she had a proper pack bound in the blanket and turned to climb out of the cave. A beam of sunlight caught her eye. Light flashed into a hollow, revealing a spark of gold and a glint of blue. What was that? Faith dropped to her stomach, put her hand through cobwebs and into the hole. She scooted closer. Her fingers closed around something. Pulling it out, she held a little jar. Curious symbols and letters were painted on it. Faith. Faith. Her name was painted in blue and gold. So pretty. There were delicate paintings of trees, doves, children, and words. She sat for some time puzzling the meaning of the script. When the King cometh, shall he find faith on the earth? Well, here I am, thought Faith. If the King wants me, here I am. Something rattled inside the jar. Picking up a broken bit of pottery, she chipped away at the ancient wax seal. With a twist and a tug, the cap came off in her hand. Out fell a scroll. The scroll was twisted around gold rods. Blue linen bound it with intricate knots. Faith took the scroll and popped it in a pocket. She would look at that later. She needed to start climbing. She wanted to see her giant friends, and Pa, too. Faith slung the pack on her back and turned to see This is where he woke after the attack. Blood. Tracks. The tracks were aged, but nothing had disturbed them. One man? No, two. The men, one was taller. Neither of them was heavy. Huge paws. He noted the stride between tracks. Not a bear, a dog. Whatever its breed, it was a monster. A child. Delicate shoes on small feet. The confusion of the attack muddled the traces. Then the little footprints were gone. He followed the tracks left by the two men and the great dog. They ran back and forth and then to the mountain. From where he stood, he saw nothing but rock and stunted bushes. Then he saw it, an opening into a black hole. Those brutes had picked up the little one and taken it into a cave. Pushing back the bush, he peered in. The stench of bats was overpowering. The puzzle of what happened was deepened into terror of what was done to a child. He had been a soldier for many years. The horrors of war were like a bleeding wound in his soul. With sadness, he reviewed many unhappy stories. Now, here was another, a child stolen away. To what fate only those men knew. How sad, how devastatingly sad. No memory stirred, no little face appeared before his mind's eye. Shaking his head, he thought, someday all would be made right. The book assured him, strong is his hand, and high is his right hand. Justice and judgment are the habitation of his throne. Mercy and truth shall go before his face. He decided it was time to go. He was sufficiently recovered, and so was the donkey. He had a passing acquaintance with the giants. Perhaps they knew the army's position. It never crossed his mind they might know about the child. Tomorrow he would leave. Before dawn, he and the donkey began the long climb. At first, the turtle dove followed on wing. Then the silly thing wanted to land on his head. He wished it would go back to the wood. It would be better for the creature to stay there. He marveled at the persistence of the bird. Finally, he allowed it to ride on top of his head. He laughed out loud. Startled at the sound of his own voice, he laughed again. It lightened his heart to think how ridiculous he must look. The trail took more of his strength than he had to give, but at last, well after the sun set, he arrived. The gate swung open. The 7 gray giants stood before him. One of the giants stepped forward and in the sign language peculiar to their order signed, "Where is Faith?" Apparently, the giant was expecting a password, a response to the question. That was not right, at least not quite right. The phrase should have been, "What is faith?" The proper military response was, "The evidence of things not seen." It was a high-level exchange. Should he try that response? Maybe, but then an incorrect answer could create big problems. He hesitated. The stress of the climb and the confusion in his mind made his head spin. Suddenly, he was not feeling well at all. The donkey pulled the lead out of his hand and trotted to one of the giants. Again came the query, "Where is faith?" Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. He whispered it aloud and collapsed at their feet. 29. The gold ribbon betrayed her. Sunshine flashed her position. Skiva saw it, kicked Old Scratch awake, and ran to the cave. He found Faith sitting in the sunshine, marveling over a china jar. When he saw her, he laughed. The girl screamed and jumped to run. Skiva was faster. He grabbed her by the hair and yanked her to his side. Trembling in the grasp of the terrible man, Faith descended into hysteria. "Shut up! Never hide from me again!" With a final jerk, Skiva threw her to the ground. Faith crumpled into a gray heap and wept. Just then, Old Scratch came running, huffing, coughing, and spitting. "Grab that pack," ordered Skiva. "Come on, move." "All right, Skiva," muttered Old Scratch. "Misery, misery, if this ain't the most misery I ever did seen." "What did you say?" "Nothing, Skiva, I's moving." Old Scratch did as Skiva bid, but he looked with a pitying eye on the little girl. He wondered, for the first time, why it was Skiva wanted her, where he was taking her, and why he was in such a confounded hurry all the time. That small wonder was a tiny seed of a thought. The seed of thought was to fear for something beside his own miserable hide. Old Scratch grabbed Faith's pack. It was not enough. The journey back to the river was, as only Old Scratch could lament. Misery. Soon Skiva's black will was the only power behind each step forward. When Faith could walk no more, she was strapped to Old Scratch's back and carried. And it rained. Rain was a constant. Faith became feverish. The spark of life within her dimmed. 30. It was raining. Of course it was raining. But there was a difference. It was the sound of rain on a roof. Faith opened her eyes to see something she only dreamed of. She was home. The tips of her fingers ran along the edge of a quilt. It was her quilt. She was in her own bed. Sleep pulled her back to dark unconsciousness. She woke again and heard movement. Old Scratch was digging in the cupboard. She watched him. He found something, a small brown crock. Faith recognized it. She and Pa potted blackberries in that crock. Old Scratch looked across the room. Faith followed his eyes. It was then she saw what became of her beloved cottage. The furniture was broken, the dishes were smashed, and someone was in Pa's bed. It was Skiva. She tried to sit up. Old Scratch's eye caught the movement. With the other eye on Skiva, Old Scratch slipped over to Faith. Here, little girlie, eats a bite now. Just a little weeny bite now. You's been sick. Dis here will brighten your eyes for sure, whispered Old Scratch. The worst be over. See, we's back in your little cottage. Sure, we's can rest a bit now. Whatever Skiva's plans were for the little girl, Old Scratch wanted no part of them. He wanted his money for finding the girl, then he wanted out. He had abandoned his pigs and mule to wander in the woods on his land. They could not be left alone forever. It was high time to get back. He would talk to Skiva first thing. Yep, that's what I'll do, muttered Old Scratch. I'll just get me money and go home. I done more'n my part. I should get extry for them caves and all this hoofing about the countryside. Time to get me back home. I miss me mule, and I ain't had me a good old smoke in a long time. Anyways, Skiva be always so mean to Old Scratch. Misery, misery. When Skiva awoke, he ordered Old Scratch to set food before him. Then he ordered the wretched man out into the rain to find the abandoned mare. She was not to be found. When Old Scratch came back with the unhappy news of the missing horse, Skiva's pale skin flushed and his black eyes flashed. Old Scratch picked that ill-timed moment to bring up the issue of payment due for services rendered. Now, Skiva, I wants to be paid for me part fairs and squares. You got the girl, and I wants to go home. Now, Skiva, pay Old Scratch what you owes him, and I's be on me way. Maybe you can see to give me a little extry for them caves and all. You wicked wretch, began Skiva, his voice rising. You owe the dear queen for expenses maintaining your disgusting hide while on this privileged adventure for her majesty. You repulsive reptile, shrieked Skiva as he threw pottery at the dodging Old Scratch. "You are in deep, deep debt for that horse you lost. That mare was one of the favorites of the dear Queen. It was to be presented at the arena to showcase the munificence of our dear Queen to her people." "You miserable maggot," screeched Skiva as he booted Old Scratch out the door. "Your precious mule and stinking hovel will be taken from you and sold unless you obey each and every one of my commands. Only in total obedience might you be spared either a short trip to the arena or a long stay in the camps." Old Scratch landed face down in mud. With his rage vented, Skiva swung around to deal with the girl. Faith was gone. Thank you for listening. To hear more of the story, please come back soon, or you may purchase your own copy on Amazon. Just follow the link below. Until next time.